Rebel Without a Cause, directed by Nicholas Ray, is a 1955 film starring James Dean in what is his best known performance. When people think of James Dean, they think of him in this, and they also think of him in Giant. Giant, which is the one where he plays the drunken cowboy with the vest. But yeah, this one is his best known role aside from Giant. The only thing that I wish was that East of Eden, which was his first and best film, was also as well known. But I'll review East of Eden some other time and focus today on Rebel Without a Cause. So anyone that's not familiar with James Dean, he was an actor. He was a method actor back in the 1950s who did only 3 films, which were East of Eden, Rebel Without a Cause, and Giant. And yeah, he mostly played rebellious characters. He wasn't such a bad guy in real life, but he was a method actor. So when he did Giant, he was almost always drunk on set because that was his character. So he lived his character day in and day out, basically. But yeah, his career was cut really short in a car accident when he was in his 20s, and he's received immortality for playing as such angry and rebellious teenagers. With the best one being his character of Jim Stark in Rebel Without a Cause. So, Rebel Without a Cause, it isn't really a masterpiece, I would say, and I have a good reason for not calling it really top of the line. And yeah, I'll get right into it. Okay. So, um, James Dean plays a teenager named Jim Stark, who he loves his parents, and his parents love him dearly, but they always they're always moving from town to town, kind of like in the movie Running on Empty with River Phoenix. Like every time Jim gets doesn't get along with anybody in a town that they live in, his parents move, and they really because they really don't want him to experience any sort of pain and hardship. They think that moving away will solve everything. Plus, his parents don't get along with each other sometimes, and that's really tough. That's really tough on him. And meanwhile, Natalie Wood, uh, she's convinced that her father doesn't love her, so she's part of this gang of greasers. And Salminio is also a teenage rebel in the film named Plato. Well, his nickname in the movie is Plato. Dennis Hopper has a bit part in this. Yes, the Dennis Hopper has a bit part as one of the greasers that's against James Dean. So it's pretty cool seeing Dennis Hopper in such a young role along with James Dean. Um, so yeah, those are the characters in nutshells, and getting and each character is so fleshed out well, so well developed, and everything's just going by super well. Well, movie wise, it's going along super well. Like the way that the pacing is, and the characterizations. I love it all. So when Jim shows up to school, they go on a trip to the planetarium, and he's instantly targeted by a group of mean greasers. even though Jim just wants peace, he doesn't want any sort of confrontation. So yeah, Trouble's not looking for he's not looking for trouble, but Trouble's looking for him. They they make they make a deal that later on in the night they'll play a game of chicken. Okay, drive off a cliff. First one to jump out of the car before the car um, goes off the cliff is the chicken. Jim gets out okay, but the guy who he was racing against doesn't, and he gets killed. And when when that happens, goes he goes on the run from everything, and Natalie Wood, um, even though she's part of Greaser Gang, she's just so confused about everything that's happening, and she ends up being one of Jim's allies. Sal Mineo also he grows to like Jim, and so the three of them end up going on the run together, including to this little abandoned mansion near the planetarium. So the movie, it's so emotionally powerful and so emotionally invested, and accurate too with teenage angst and rebellion. Like this was long before John Hughes, and this movie, frankly, was doing it better. But after Jim starts to go on the run with Natalie Wood and Sal Mineo, the movie it the movie just loses something. It could be that it loses its steam. It could be that it's just not as good as before. But yeah, that's what really. I don't want to say that the movie really falls apart, but it's not as good. It doesn't measure up to the emotional, overwhelming nature of how it is earlier. The romance that's worked in between James Dean and Natalie Wood, it's pretty weak. If you want to even call it a romance, yeah, it's weak, and also it's slow. It's not. It's very energetic and not very powerful. Now I'm talking just about when they go to the yeah from when they go to the mansion to the end. It's pretty weak. Everything before that is just so amazing. I I just thought that maybe if this was directed by someone else, like maybe Sidney Lumet, even though he did his first film a few years later, or if it was directed by even if it was done by Cecil B. DeMille, even though he mostly did like mise en scène epics, I think that that everything afterwards would have been more worthy of the rest of the film because everything after James Dean goes on the run, it just falls flat, and because of that, I don't think I'll ever be able to be with everyone else in terms of saying that this is one of the all time greats in general. It kind of is an all time great, but yeah, it's nowhere near as good. Well, I shouldn't say nowhere near as good as East of Eden, but yeah, James Dean he's just so amazing in this, and everything like the whole movie is just so pitch perfect up until it gets to James Dean and Sal Mineo and Natalie Wood going on the run. It just flattens out for me, and I was never really um, yeah, it was never really on point for throughout the rest of the film. So yeah, I love the whole film up until the last little bit. So I'm gonna give it 3.5 stars out of 4. instead of an even 4.